it's difficult to manage everything at once. So we are taking our time, but things are improving. But if you check the numbers, it's depressing. So we still have a lot of, I mean, pandemic era left. Basically, I think it'll take around a month or so to drop down the numbers. But let's see how it goes.
But Ankit, our president has the answer. Slow down the testing.
Yeah, I mean, there won't be as many people that will be infected if you slow down the testing, Ankit. Have you guys thought of that?
So we were initially we were slow, then we picked up the testing, and now we are doing testing only in the containment zones mostly. So
Well, that's the word
you know that,
that's why your numbers are going up.
We are 1.3 billion actually. So if we slow down the testing, it will take a lot of years. So we are just trying to manage the run rate so that we'll go and trace a lot of people's every now and then and make sure that they come out cured. But the best part is that we have a good success rate in terms of number of cures, and also we have very mild symptoms as compared to serious symptoms. And we have a lot of immunity boosters and magic medicines in India like Ayurveda and all those stuff. So we are taking all those things to make sure that our immunity is good, and then we can survive ourselves during the COVID era.
Yeah,
that is what we are doing.
Yeah, the death rate seems pretty low. In other words, when you look at the U.S., we're sitting at 137. Then almost half is Brazil at 72, and then half again is India at 23. So you're looking at, and then half again at Russia at 11. So
yeah, can you trust those numbers?
What?
I don't trust those numbers from Russia.
Well, of course not. But do you see China on the list here at all?
No.
Do you trust any numbers from China?
No.
Neither do I. I mean, the thing is, oh, there it is. It's way down there. But, it's manipulated data, as we well know. And even the U.S.
If you check out the weekend numbers, they are much bigger. So if I go to yesterday's numbers, see the numbers. 58,000 in US, 25,000 Brazil, and 30,000 in India. And if I go 2 days ago, then the numbers are 61,000. So what happened is that if you check out the graph on weekends, the numbers are growing in US and Brazil as compared to India, and that is because I think people are going out on weekends and they are at home or maybe doing work on weekdays.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what's happening, but the numbers are growing on weekends.
Really? Okay.
Is there a I'm trying to put my glasses on and say it's a little bit small on my screen, but does it show anywhere there what percentage of the population has actually died? How many people have died as a percentage of the total population?
Yeah. If you go to if you go to the one right, the last part is population. The right before is the tests per population, and then you're looking for million of population. See, that's the important part because some of the countries are larger and some are smaller. So the United States is only 73.5 death per million, where that's
the world. That's the world. So the United States.
I think that's the total death. United States is 416.
Yeah, 416 per million, which is not good. Brazil at 339 and India is 17.
You can see that Spain and the UK, for example, have had much higher rates than that.
Yeah.
So let's not beat up the United States too much.
Right. No, we won't because our deaths per million. But still, we're below the world average of 73 per million. And India is way below, but part of that could be because India has a younger population. And we're like Japan, we have an older population. And the UK has a crazy population. So they're sitting at 660, but,
Or maybe the Indians are taking some things for their health, for their personal protection individually that are helping them recover faster and suffer milder cases. And maybe the United States diet is not so good for building up our immune system.
Yeah, but remember we're talking to Dr. Sagu, I think, who was doing bariatric surgery, and he said that India is starting to face a greater, heavier, unhealthy population. So we sent McDonald's over there, and McDonald's and all our fast food.
USA.
Okay, you want to destroy a country, send the McDonald's. Okay,
a guy like me As long as the USA is number one, I'm happy.
Right. Well, you know, the thing is, you don't need atomic bombs, guys. You don't need all this military. What you need to do is send them our fast foods over there. That'll take care of it.
Yeah.
So anytime you want to destroy a country, send our fast food guys over there.
Yeah, China's beating us in technology, but we're going to beat them with the fast foods.
We're going to send you Kentucky Fried Chicken. That'll take care of you. You know? So, yeah, the fast food industry. So the thing is, that has a lot to do with it. I would imagine we've seen also younger demographics just not as affected as much. Now, younger demographics with pre-existing conditions are a different story. So if you're a younger person with diabetes or you have a health condition, asthma or whatever, then you're a higher propensity to pass away. But if you're a younger person, you have no pre-existing conditions and stuff like that, can float in and out in this like another flu.
Except you might have lung scarring or some problem with your brain that is lifelong.
Yeah, but you could make the argument they would have that anyway. So, you know,
I think it's important though that we don't focus too heavily just on numbers and what they might appear at first glance. I'll be very careful what I say about your country's politics at a time like now, where it's so polarized. I was very interested to see a few weeks ago that Fox was talking about how Democrat states such as California and New York had these huge increases in coronavirus cases, whereas some of the Republican states didn't. And more recently, you've started to see places like Texas starting to have a bit more of a resurgence in the virus. I think some of the things that people are not always able to see in the numbers are things like density of living. Obviously, living in New York City or in LA, there's a lot. You're going to have contact with a lot more people than perhaps you're going to have if you're living in, on a farm in Kansas. So a lot of those things are not necessarily reflected in the numbers, and that also will apply to countries. So if you have a look at Russia's numbers, if we believe Russia's numbers, they are actually quite small. But if you actually have a look at Russia, whilst yes, there is a big percentage of the population that lives in places like St. Petersburg and Moscow, there are a lot. It's a big country, and there are a lot of people that live in quite remote places of the country that are unlikely to come in contact with people who have been exposed to COVID. So those are also things to take into account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but right.
See, then what about India? They have billions of people that live all close to each other. I mean, how can we account for India with billions of people that live close to each other?
Well, you're right. India does have some very big cities with, hundreds of millions of people that live in those cities. But India also is a very big country that also has a lot of very rural areas where people aren't necessarily going to travel to. Mm-hmm. So, again, it's very interesting because I see the same thing happen in the insurance industry. The same thing can often happen in the healthcare industry. The same thing can happen in finance. Is that you see a set of numbers, but nobody actually asks why. Why are these numbers the way they actually are? And sometimes we can get the impression that something seems a lot worse or a lot better than it actually is. And that's something that, in my opinion, computers can't necessarily pick up on. Sometimes that's something that we as human beings have to review the data and have a look at it a little bit more closely and say, okay, does this make sense, or is there potentially other explanations for it?
Okay. Well, would you fly an airplane that has no human and it's just completely computer controlled flights landing? And they do land a lot of planes just on the computer systems today. Would you, Shakeel, fly a flight from, let's say, from Sydney to London, computer guided, no human?
Well, technically speaking, I wouldn't be flying. The computer would be, but no, I'll leave your English alone. That was only a little crack because you had a crack at us. Would I? Not based on today's technology. However, at the moment, if you talk to Airbus or Boeing right now, it used to be that the pilots took off and then they kind of sat around and then they landed. Now with the new technology, they barely do that. A lot of the landing happens by computer automatically with computer assistance. So, I think that we're not far away from that. But again, I wouldn't want to fly in a plane that had no human intervention in case something went wrong.
Right.
Computers are certainly getting a lot better, but
Right.
I don't think that they're going to be able to replace humans altogether.
Well, Shakeel, I've just met you, but you're obviously a brilliant analyst, and I think you have a 1700 rating only because you haven't devoted enough attention to chess.
I totally agree. So, Shakeel, here's what you need to do. Give up your job, play up chess on the internet all the time, ignore anything else in life, and then your rating will go up. Read his book, Chess for Dummies, and then your rating would go up. But you have to sacrifice everything. Everything.
I will definitely get the book. My biggest problem, and it's actually hurt my game, I have to say, it's hurt my game dramatically, is that I've been playing a lot of 1 minute blitz. And, you don't have a lot of time. You're just sort of playing and, you make a mistake and you make some silly move and who sort of cares. And I actually found my rating one day fell all the way down to 1100 and I thought, no, I can't have this. So I sort of got it back up to 1600 and I was a bit more happy with that.
Yeah. Well, Shakeel, my wife came home one day and said, "What did you do today?" And I realized I had played about 1,000 games of blitz, of bullet chess. We call it.
Right. For those who've joined later,
cold turkey. I never played again.
Cold turkey on bullet. For those who've joined us,
1 minute chess is not.
We were discussing just briefly bullet chess, which is the whole game is played in 1 minute. So you get 1 minute, your opponent gets 1 minute. They call it bullet chess. I think Kramik said you can do it another way. All you do is keep hitting the clock. Everybody keeps hitting the clock and ignore the game altogether. Blitz is a little faster. It's 5 minutes, so 3 to 5 minutes. Then you go to action to 10. Then you go regular tournament, which could be 40 moves and 2 hours. I mean, it just goes on forever. So joining us from the great country of Canada, who used to live in the other great country of Russia, Alexander Starr, who actually runs our television program, Chess Stars. Welcome to the program, Alexander Starr. Tell us a little bit about, I think last week you actually had Mike Hofer on Chess Stars along with Jim Eade. Tell us who you're going to have on Chess Stars.
Well, we had a fantastic program on Saturday. Everybody enjoyed that. I think we are going to have this Saturday continuation of last Saturday's program, simply because there was so much to cover. And we, in my opinion, just started to explore really what a chess of today means, where it's going. And I'm uncovering new sources almost daily, which shows you that today's chess in a giant crisis never experienced before. In the last 500 years, there were no situation with the chess as it is now, on all levels that you may think about. It's horrendous world championships where you have 12 draws and 12 games. It's generally lost. Therefore, one of the reasons is that unfortunately the interest to chess therefore is getting lost, because why would you pay $1.5 million to two guys making 12 draws and 12 games? Can they do it for maybe $500 a game? That probably would be fair. I wouldn't pay even 500. Some people probably would, and maybe even 1,000. So here we go. Here's $1,000. Make another draw. Thank you. Okay, here's another $1,000. Okay, here's another draw. Done deal. Great. Let's move. Is it so exciting? Is it something that you would sit for hours to follow that? Not me. I'm not going to do that. So if there are more and more people like myself, and I understand there are plenty now, that means something has to be done. I don't know what. And maybe there is nothing can be done simply because in its present form, where both players content with a draw, expected result is a draw. That's just as simple as that. Even more problems are with online chess, when there is a cheating, is incredible. It's impossible to stop. And regardless of what everyone is claiming, every side like chess.com and others, they're claiming that they found anti-cheating mechanisms and they're this and that. It's all, and I used to say 75 cents, but these days it's probably $3.50. Will buy you a cup of coffee. That's all. Because there is no substance behind this. There is impossible to detect cheating and do anything about it. In
But Sasha,
fact, yes.
yes, Sasha, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to bring Shakeel into this because the pandemic that you're describing is technology based. It's not
It's technology based.
but it's technology. That is what's ruining.
But let's see what Alexander Starr is saying. It's just true. The last World Championship with Fabiano and Magnus, 12 games, 12 draws, boring. And so his chess stars, rather than saying that, okay, you get to bet on the moves and what the next move is, and then you get to participate in the game, and you don't care if it's a draw or not. You could win or lose crowns if you bet on the next move. Anyway, Shakeel, you might find that pretty interesting since you come from that world of investing. And actually, Alexander Starr runs our investment show on Wednesday because he does his own individual investing.
Yes,
Shakeel, by the way, Alexander is a professional investor, manages other people's money. So the next move on the board, he doesn't tell people what that's going to be. It's a whole different cat.
I will just make the comment though that if 12 draws is boring, we call it soccer, but the British still insist on calling it football. I don't know how I would feel about going to a game 90 minutes later, it's a 0-0 draw, coming in the next week, another 0-0 draw. Mm-hmm. I think I'd be pretty annoyed at that game too. So I think I'd prefer the chess, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, I speak enough British to know what nil means and what football means. But what we're talking about is something that is, for example, 30 years ago, I was paying per minute charges on AOL to watch Karpov-Kasparov play. I was riveted to every single move. I didn't even watch the last World Championship because
I didn't either.
It's just not interesting to me.
Right. I didn't either. And the thing is, what happened is there were 12 games, 12 draws. Then they went to a speed match. Magnus won the speed game, and it was over. And it was like, why are you going to watch 12 draws? And part of it is the computers and programs. These people have programmed their brains into computers, and they basically play the game out to a draw. Then they go do it again. They do it again. They do it again. And you're going, well, why are we bothering watching this? There's nothing interesting really going on. And then they go down to a blitz game, and then the blitz game determines the match.
Well, this is a different discipline. The blitz and active chess, they are completely different discipline from tournament chess, number one. Number two, Carlsen admitted himself that in practice, he is learning and following games of artificial intelligence program by the name, what is it? AlphaZero. I have to remember that.
Yeah, AlphaZero. Yep.
So he's practicing, and now another problem is that his opponents, look at these tournaments, what they're playing online now, that Carlsen organized. There's $150,000 in prizes. And all what they show their memory skills. There is no game being played. They just memorize certain lines. So the guy memorized one line, another guy memorizes another line. So there is no gaming process. I'd rather watch, poker on a TV when there is no play. There is no playing progress. I mean, one got 2 cards, another one got 2 cards, then 5 cards at the middle of the table, which could be used by both players for fulfill their combination to complete the combination. And that's all. There is no playing process like in chess. But there is a chess, also very little playing process. But because once they exhausted their memories and they're trying to play a sort of game on its own, they're playing on a 2200 levels. They're making huge mistakes. They're playing horrible moves, and it's not worth seeing. It's horrible. I'd rather watch game between AlphaZero against Stockfish. That will be way more complete game on a much higher level. And therefore, I don't see any reason what these people like Carlson and his friends, what are they contributing to chess? Is there a beauty in their games? Is there something to learn from their games? No, 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 absolutely nothing. They're just grabbing 99.99% of the money available to chess and put it in their bank accounts. And that's really all what's happening here. I can say that.
We'll get
Right,
Magnus
let's
Carlsen
stop
to
because
appear.
if Sasha gets on a roll, it's a bad time. So let's say hello to Kimberly and Sharif. Thank you for joining
Sharif,
us.
yes, right.
Has Malaysia opened up its economy?
Yes, yes. I said that step by step, Malaysian economy is open up, and most importantly, Malaysia start to getting very good result from this economy because they handle or tackle this COVID-19 situations. I told you, let's say their central bank, Bank Negara Malaysia, they are actually getting a very good reserve in their bank. I think it's a $103 billion right now, as well as in microeconomics. Like even AirAsia, Petronas, Sunway, Gamuda, many positive business impact right now we are observing. Malaysia initially their finance minister they said that we need 1 year to overcome from this situation, but now the business like researcher and scholar and policymaker they say even businessmen they also said in between 6 months hopefully they will be overcome from this economic situations. I want to say the countries, those who have good ecosystem like Malaysia, and they try to overcome from this COVID-19 situations, I think they will get a very good result recent, like next 1 year.
Well, Sharif, I must say that Nick's earlier guest, Peter, had me so depressed. And now I was putting my CBD patch on my head. But now you're giving me a source of optimism.
That's because he is in Malaysia. And they see Malaysia and Australia, they don't have the big coronavirus issues that they do in the United States. So for those who are joining us close to the hour, we have Ken Calhoun has just joined us from the Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, who's director at IBM TV. Jim Eade, who runs Chess Without Borders, our television show at IBM TV. Sharif, who's he's in the state of San Francisco and the state of confusion. Then we have Sharif, who's actually in Malaysia, who's a PhD scholar in the Malaysia area. Alexander Starr, who runs Chess Stars, also our investing show on Wednesday at 1 o'clock for those people who need to learn a little bit more about covered call and options. He's in Toronto. And then Shakeel, who's actually in Sydney, Australia, who is a professional investment manager, or I guess does money management. So unlike Alexander will tell you what he's going to do, Shakeel says, well
Alexander would be quite interested to know that what really helped me to sort of cut my bones and really advance my career was actually options trading. When I first started in finance, I was quite young. I was quite cocky and arrogant. I knew everything, and I wasn't going to listen to anybody. And so lots of people told me about options trading, and I did not want to know about them. And I actually did finally start to learn about options trading, and it made a huge difference to me. And that's then led on to other strategies that I've been able to use elsewhere. So I'm sure that Alexandra and I can have some very interesting conversations.
Yeah.
Shakeel, one question to you. Shakeel, are you buying options?
Am I buying options?
Are you buying options?
He doesn't tell us what he does.
Oh,
he doesn't tell us. See, the thing is, that's the difference.
No. We have honest program here. We're not lying. We're honest. And that's
okay.
why I want to exchange ideas with a professional like Shakeel. So please tell us.
Well, I will start off by saying to anybody who's watching that anything that I say is not intended to be financial advice. This is just my opinion. So please seek your own professional advice before acting on anything that I say. Do I buy options? Of course. Do I sell options? Of course. It depends on the circumstances. When you become a little bit more advance in options trading, you will start to look at options pricing in relation to its volatility pricing. And I think a lot of people, when they get to that level, start to get a little bit confused, because what they'll start to do is they'll start to think that because an options price in volatility terms is quite high, it's really expensive, and so therefore on the other hand,
that's the Securities Exchange Commission coming in.
yeah, there we go.
To listen to you.
On the other hand, what you'll sometimes see people doing is they'll see that options prices are very low relative to volatility, and so they'll rush out to buy them. But often the reason why volatility prices are high or low is because of something that's fundamentally changed in the market. So I have no aversion to buying options, but I think that you need to be buying them for a reason. And one of the big takeaways, if I can just share this with people, is you can buy an option and be correct about direction, but be wrong about volatility, and you can still lose money. You can buy an option and be incorrect about direction, but be correct about volatility, and you can still make money. So options are a very versatile instrument. They can be used to mitigate your risk, or they can be used to take on enormously larger amounts of risk and disproportionate amounts of risk based on the portfolio that you have.
Shakeel, thank you very much for explanation. But sorry, let me finish.
Yes.
My question was incorrect. What I meant, whether you're buying naked options, because if you're selling vertical call or buying vertical call, of course it implies a spread. I didn't mean that at all. I meant naked options. The number two question, are you aware that from 1973, when they first started to trade on Chicago Board of Trade until today, which is 2020, there was only 1 year when buyers of options beat sellers. It was, of course, 1987, year of the stock market crash. All other, so we are talking about 26 years out of 27, the sellers of options beat buyers. Would you agree with that?
The numbers that you've said are correct, but no, I don't agree with what you said.
Okay.
Based on what?
I want to make a comment here. One, I want to say thank you, Shakeel. It's a pleasure to meet you. Holmes shared a lot with me the other day about you, so I was looking forward to meeting you today. And actually took off from something I have to be doing to beam in to say hi.
Thank you.
I truly respect your position. I'm so thankful that you do a disclaimer. And the other thing I want to say is the reason why Nick and I like to do these shows, and the reason why we inspired them, is when we used to do the TV shows and interview these, people like you that are just worldly experienced. The interviews were great, but the better talks were at the coffee shop at lunch. And I used to tell Nick, I wish I could bring the camera, and when we're all sitting around just like this and just having a chat, that we share this information with the people, because it's those kind of conversations of what if, this is what I'm doing, from experienced people, that open that door to give people knowledge and understanding to have less fear. Because we all make mistakes. There are a lot of risks out there. But the more you talk about it, the less fear you can have about it. But my question to you is, and because I missed the first part of the conversation, and since you've been here, is what kind of education, you talk about that you learned, but what kind of education did you have in your youth and after education? And then what did you get to learn this? Where did you go?
Very interesting question, and unfortunately, amongst a group of academics, I think you probably won't like my answer too much, but I will very quickly say I'm glad that you like my disclaimer, because your shirt that says "I have no trust," I think explained it all perfectly. I would actually like to answer Alexander's question in a bit more detail later, but to answer your question, look, I thought I was a bit clever for school, and I wanted to get out there and sort of work out how to make my own money and do my own thing. And I was so excited. I became so enthralled with watching on TV all these people screaming at each other, and there was all these bits of paper flying up in the air. It all looked very, very exciting, and I thought, that's me. That's what I want to be doing. And of course, by the time I turned 16, 17, the Sydney Futures Exchange closed down. So that was the open outcry pit. So I didn't have the opportunity to do that. And by the time I got old enough to go to the UK and to work on the floor there, their open outcry pits closed as well. So I'm sort of going around at the moment, Chicago and New York, begging people that I know, please, will you let me go onto the floor? But look, most of my education, I did actually study finance. So I studied financial instruments. I studied a lot of things that I learned about markets and economics that, frankly, just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And because of the kind of person I was back then, again, very, very cocky and very arrogant kind of person, because something didn't make sense to me, I would quite frequently say, well, that's just utter nonsense. So why should we do it? And one of the examples of that was when I was 17, we had the great tragedy in New York, the September 11 tragedy. And of course, that affected markets all over the world. Sorry, I just got a bit of background noise there.
The SEC is coming again.
They're coming for me again.
Markets.
One of the things that I found so frustrating about what I was hearing at the time, we have a thing in Australia called superannuation funds. They're very similar to what you guys would call a 401k or a pension fund. And a lot of these funds have their values fall by, 30%, 40%, 50%, those sorts of levels. And of course, we saw that again during the 2007, 8, 9 crisis. We saw these massive falls in people's pension retirement money that's been professionally managed. It always seemed to me that the markets can really only ever do one of two things. They can sit flat for a while, but eventually they will either move up or they will move down. And if you're professionally doing something, if you're professionally managing a portfolio of assets, for it to come as a surprise to you that the market did one of the only two possible things it can do seemed to me at the time to be a little bit incompetent. Now, obviously today, because I'm a bit more experienced and I understand the finance markets a little bit better, I do understand now why some money managers are under so much pressure that they don't have a choice but to wear some losses that I don't think that they should have to wear. But again, a lot of that has come about because of bad government regulation. It's come about, for example, when we've talked a lot about HFT, we mentioned that earlier, where people are trying to race the market and trying to front run orders and things like that. A lot of that came about because in 2006, the SEC passed legislation in order to try and prevent a different type of predatory behaviour. But it caused a different issue to occur, and I don't think that issue has been adequately addressed yet. So this was really my reasoning for wanting to get into the finance markets, was I thought that I could do a better job, and I think